We're going up and down, over and over, over and over. It's the same old thing. Up and down, over and under.
Well, Shane, man, thank you for joining the show. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, how are you holding up today in beautiful Southern California?
It's hard not to love being here. It's always kind of, it gets a little hot during the summers, but it's a pretty great place to be. I live on a little homestead property here, so I have chickens right outside my back door and or my garage door, and food growing everywhere on my property. So,
oh, that's awesome. So we just got chickens.
Nice.
Maybe 3 months ago.
How many?
So we have 5.
Okay, you'll have 10 soon enough.
Yeah, well, it's so much easier than we thought, and we're on a pretty big. It's a farm. We're on like 12 acres out here, and we free range them. And so far, they're doing great, and it's far easier than I thought it was going to be. To be honest,
do they lay their eggs in a nesting box, or do you have to go on an Easter egg hunt every day to go find your eggs?
No, we're lucky. They do it in the nesting box.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
How about you?
Some days they go in the nesting box. Other days we find eggs just in the tall grass in the corners of the property. It just depends on where they're hanging out.
To be fair, they're probably laying eggs all over the property. I just have no idea and haven't found them yet.
To me, it's always we have 10, and so it's always the like, why do we only have 2 eggs today? And then it's like, man, they're probably out in the yard. I guess we just lost our shot at eggs today.
Yeah, the math isn't adding up. Right. Oh, so you're growing farm around the house, or I'm sorry, you're growing food around the house. What are you growing?
Well, so we have a half-acre property here, which for San Diego is, decent size where we are. But we have almost all the trees on our property are edible. So we have lots of citrus, 3 lemon, 3 orange of different varieties, 3 avocado, sapote, which nobody ever knows, and I love. It's delicious.
Okay.
Macadamia nut. And tomorrow, actually, we're putting in 30 more trees. We're putting in an orchard in our back, which is going to be pear, plum, pluot, apple, more avocado, cherimoya, elderberry, mulberry.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So, now I feel I limped in here with just a couple chickens. Clearly you're into this. So is that a big passion for you?
Yeah. I found when we moved here, I didn't have a green thumb. I didn't know anything about growing food or the land or the earth or anything. But I've always had a very strong connection to the earth. Growing up in Minnesota, I was surrounded by rural, everything. So, pigs, chickens, cows, corn, lots of corn around me. But it always interested me. It helps my last name is Farmer, I guess. I'm like finally living up to my family name. But
you may not have had a choice.
Yeah. I fell in love with permaculture. Which is like a lot soil ecology and rebuilding an environment based off of as few inputs as possible.
Oh, cool.
And so our property was kind of perfect for that. It had been forgotten when we moved here. It had been really left to fall apart for 20 years probably. So a lot of the trees were not healthy when we got here, and I kind of made it my mission to bring them back to life. Mm-hmm. And then really learned more about permaculture. So then I got into raised bed gardening. So now I'm looking at my garden right now. We have tomatoes, tons of dark leafy greens, watermelon, eggplant, peppers, all that's growing out in the yard as well. So
yeah.
And then the chickens help.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've been trying to as well. We actually got honeybees. People didn't know they were tuning into an agricultural podcast with Ken and Shane. They're like, what the hell?
I don't think we even knew that this is where it was going to go.
That's okay. We have honeybees. I'm fired up. They're doing really well. So,
do you have the suit and everything?
Oh man, I've got a suit for me, my wife, my 2 kids.
Nice.
We have a little baby too, but we're not bringing him out there quite yet. But yeah, it's a blast. My kids just go crazy for it.
You gotta go check out permaculture. Start doing a deep dive, and if you enjoy learning about the land, it's really interesting. It's really a great book is called Gaia's Garden. It was kind of my start into it. Gaia's Garden, and you just learn a whole lot about where to put things, how to put things, it's called sheep mulching, for example. I've sheep mulched my whole yard, bringing the soil back to life. Wow. Where all of a sudden we're getting earthworms in the ground, which we never had before because the land was so dry and arid.
Yeah.
So it's cool stuff.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. And so my brother-in-law actually is starting an ostrich farm down in Central Florida. And I mean, of course he's not here, but like this is like right up his alley. And I was just talking to him the other day. He's there's a whole method to the madness in terms of like which livestock goes through in which order. It's like the ostrich are followed by like the chickens, and the chickens are followed by, I think, the sheep or whatever it is. And so it sounds like it's in the same vein, which is pretty cool. So I'll have to recommend that book to him.
Yeah, check it out.
All right. Awesome. So when you're not farming, you have built a pretty cool online coaching platform.
Yeah. I like to think so.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually how I found out about you. So, something that would be interesting, like, can you just talk a little bit about kind of like how Darkhorserowing came to be?
Yeah. So I found rowing in college. Obviously, being from rural Minnesota, rowing wasn't a thing. Didn't have access to it. I played the traditional football, baseball, alpine skiing was my deviation from basketball. But then I got to college and just rowing fell into my lap. Somebody grabbed me and said, "Hey, you're tall. Rowing looks like it'd be your sport." I fell in love with it while I was rowing. And post college, I got my first job with a business degree in a suit and a tie, thinking I was supposed to do that. That's what you do when you have a business degree. So I went and sold life insurance for 9 months.
Yep.
Hated my life. Just could not stand it. Love the product. It was not me. Wasn't what I was supposed to do. Yeah. And so made the jump with no plan. Realized that rowing was the thing that I really missed and loved more than anything at that time. And so I just decided that's going to be my trajectory. I don't know what it's going to turn into, but that's going to be my trajectory. So I started coaching at a local level, and then started coaching at an international level on my own, started my own seminar series. Then Concept 2 heard about that, which is the company that manufactures the predominant rowing machine in our industry. Right. They offered me a job as their head coach for CrossFit rowing. So I took that position on. Yeah. Traveled the world coaching for Concept 2. And then I believe it was right before, man, my timeline's like a little messy at this point, but basically,
sorry, they have no idea.
Basically in 2015, I realized, because we'd been getting so much request for like coaching, and I couldn't be everywhere at once. And the only way I was able to coach people was by landing in their locale, coaching them, and then leaving. And I just wanted to have a bigger impact than that. And so I shifted to figuring out how to coach online, rowing specifically, which was not easy. There was a lot. That was a big nut to crack. And so I just went headlong into that because I knew that was going to be the future of what this industry became. And so I started going down that path. And that's how Darkhorserowing was born, was I need to get this message to more people. Yeah. And I wasn't making YouTube videos then. I just was writing online programming, trying to do it through blog articles, which was not a great way of teaching rowing. And that was how it sprouted. And then it was just an evolution process from there. I credit Marie Forleo's B School, which is an online business course, essentially. Yeah. Geared primarily towards women. And so I was one of like 15 dudes out of probably 800 women in this course. And I loved it. I learned so much, and it got me to make the commitment to start creating videos. And that was in like April of 2016. And so I made the commitment that I was going to make a video every single week for a minimum of a year. And if I hated it at the end of a year, I could give it up. Yeah. And I didn't hate it. So I've kept it up ever since then. And now we're at 2 videos a week, and we'll probably add to that in the future. Yeah.
How, so, I mean, historically, right? Like really the only opportunity for rowing was crew.
Yeah.
And I feel like now CrossFit has just led this like huge revival of interest in the sport. Like, I guess how important has CrossFit been to kind of like where rowing is today? Like, is that the thing that kind of like brought it, not to say that it to the next level, but I suppose like this much more broader appeal?
Absolutely instrumental, just like hands down. There's no way that we would be where we are today had CrossFit not come along, because every CrossFit gym needed a Concept 2 machine. It was such a fundamental part of their programming, because it's a suck machine. Like that's why they don't use it in the same way that I use it. I use it as a training tool, but for CrossFit, the intensity level was what they loved out of that.
Yeah.
You could take somebody from 0 to, oh, I hate my life in a minute period. And so every CrossFit gym had to have at least one. And so everybody started seeing it more than just collecting dust in the corner of their 24-hour fitness. And that opened a lot of eyes to maybe the rowing machine is worth paying attention to again. CrossFit hangs out long enough. You know, I started doing CrossFit in 2006 and it was a part of it then. So,
you started doing CrossFit in 2006.
Yeah. Way back when.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was an OG in that community.
Wow. All right. Yeah. Because I mean, I don't think we've talked about it yet, but like you were very successful as a CrossFit athlete as well, right? Went to the games multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what I want to know about rowing. As you mentioned, it's a suck machine.
Right.
So
it can be. It
can be. Okay. So maybe that's a good place to start. So like, what is it about rowing that to your point, like you fell in love with in college?
So there are two different ways to speak about this, right? I fell in love with rowing the sport. Rowing the sport it's beautiful. It's intense. It's poetry in motion. It is it helps. It's the ultimate team sport. Not saying it's more of a team sport than any other sport, but it requires 100% team effort. There's no place for a superstar in rowing. So everybody just has to be on the same level mentally and physically. Any weak player on either of those factors can pull an entire team back in their success level. Yeah. I found the closest friends I will ever have in my entire life through rowing as well. And we saw success as a team. And success is relative, right? To us, USD, where I went to school, did not have a history, save for like maybe 1 or 2 years in the 80s, of doing anything with rowing. We were a small private Catholic school that had no history. And when we came into the program my freshman year, we saw success in our first year. We were really dedicated. We were really committed. We had a good group of guys, small group. And at the end of that first season, the varsity came to us and said, hey, that was really cool what you guys did, taking a bronze medal at Dad Dales, which was the first East Coast race that the school had gone to because of how we'd done through our first year there. They said, that's really cool what you guys have done, but don't get used to it. This is not a winning program. And we were like,
just motivation.
Yeah, right. Like, great. Thanks, guys. And so as a novice squad, or as a bunch of freshmen, we basically decided that's not who we are. You guys are welcome to be that. And we came back the next year, basically secretly planning to take over the varsity. And that's what we did. We trained harder. We were more focused. We cared more. And we essentially as a group took the varsity 8 boat and ran with it for the next 4 years. We owned that. And a lot of those guys ended up quitting because we just pushed it to a level where they didn't want to contribute anymore. It was too hard for them. There was too much commitment. And we ended up going to the national championships our senior year. Again, in this 12 of us, had any of us gotten hurt, we would have had to drop down to a single boat instead of an 8 and a 4. And we wouldn't have been able to really go and perform the way that we did. So anyways, that's I awesome. Completely forgot the original question.
That's okay. It was better than I was getting at anyways.
Anyways, I guess so that's how I fell in love with rowing. Yeah. And where I really found the connection was when I started teaching on a ground level to people who didn't care about rowing and had no good reason to care about rowing. So, they looked at it and they're like, why should I even bother looking at the mechanics of this or understanding the machine? And there's just something about the teaching element that I fell in love with, and helping people find access to this machine that's usable for everyone at any stage of fitness, from day one of a weight loss journey to elite athlete.
Yeah. And so, the way in which it was used by CrossFit, right? You said it was a suck machine.
Yeah.
Has that kind of interpretation of like the role that the rowing machine can play in terms of like that fitness community, that sport evolved, or is it still largely used as, to your point, a suck machine?
It's in my opinion, it's evolved slightly.
Yeah.
to now what you see is some of the programming that comes along is they use it to expose weakness or the lack of focus on the machine. That's when you're seeing a longer piece or a longer row on the machine is typically to expose, hey, who's taken the time to actually focus on this and who hasn't. So when you see something like a marathon row in the CrossFit Games, it's to totally expose, hey, maybe you have a good engine, but it's to break people. You maybe have a good engine, but that only goes so far. At a certain point, if your mechanics break down, if that all changes, it's going to get exposed really quickly.
Yeah. So, from your perspective, I guess, because I also think that's the association a lot of people probably have with the erg when they walk in, right? It's like you burn out quick. It can kill you if you don't know what you're doing. I don't really want to mess with that. Like, what's the alternative approach to that? Like, how do you recommend that it's used by, to your point, people of all fitness levels, like in order to like get the most out of it?
Well, so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What was your journey through it when you joined our program? Because you went through our program and you're kind of, we have a bunch of different people that come in. Some come in again at stage one, you being a former athlete. I'm curious from yours, I'll happily answer, but I want to hear your take on what happened and what your progress looked like.
Yeah, no, this is good. Turning the tables. So for me, I was doing a decathlon. The people listening are probably sick of hearing about it, but I was doing a decathlon. They do it all over the country now, which is pretty cool. It's a charity event and 10 events. It's all one day. So it's like every 30 minutes, there's another event. So it's half traditional decathlon, half like, modified for the weekend warrior. So, we run the 400, the 800, and then they also throw in like the 500-meter row as another like kind of like sprint endurance type event. And so I had no experience rowing whatsoever. And after trying to do a 500-meter sprint for the first time, I was like, wow, I got to figure this thing out. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to finish the day. So, for me, like with most things, now the internet's so incredible. I just went to YouTube. I was like, how do people do this the right way? Right.
How to do rowing.
Basically, right? Like everything from like, how am I supposed to actually pull this thing? Which I now know it's not a pull.
Very good.
Maybe we can talk about that later. To like, how do I deal? Well, what the hell is a damper? Right. So I was just coming in a complete novice, but I was going to do an event where that was a part of it. And I wanted to perform well. And so watched a lot of your videos, got a lot out of it, but I still didn't have a great sense of how should I structure my workouts? You know what I mean? To kind of like build up the proper amount of like endurance and like some sort of like lactic threshold, so that I could, do the event and then continue to do something else in another 30 minutes. So that's how I stumbled upon your program. And I got a lot out of it. Like I ended up, what did I do that day? And it's like the 6th event, but and I do credit your program a lot. I think I did like a 117.
Nice.
And now I was puking after. So for those listening, let me just,
that's the suck factor. That's where that's the intensity level.
It didn't come without a high cost, but that's how I found out about it. But and to kind of kick it back to you, I actually started to enjoy it once I began to understand how to use it the appropriate way.
Yeah.
Now I actually like using it as an alternative to like jogging on the treadmill, or I'll do both in the same cardio session just to like have some variety. So that was my journey.
It's essentially the alternative to the make it a suck machine is just demystifying the process and not attempting to make you suffer, because I think where it gets a little bit confusing for people is they only see the machine as 0 or 100%. You either give everything or you're not rowing. There's a whole lot of variance in there that happens in between, where you can accomplish a lot of different things with a lot of different programming for different purposes and different reasons. So it's demystifying demystifying the black box. Okay. It's making it translucent and saying, here are the factors that actually make you effective on this machine. And you can do it at 50% effort, 60, 70, and you can increase intensity as you're comfortable. And as soon as that is the discussion you're having, and also I get it, you don't want to care about rowing, you just want a good workout, right? When we have that discussion, that's far different than me looking in the face and be like, you need to care about rowing because rowing is the greatest sport on earth. I love rowing, and I think there are many people that find they love it once they get into it enough. But that's not the opening discussion. The opening discussion is, hey, listen, this machine is very versatile for everybody. It takes, it reduces impact on your joints. It allows you to prolong any aerobic workout that you may not be able to do if you're on your legs, or, you know, get uncomfortable on a bike, or if you're not comfortable being on a bike out on the road, or it allows you to work on a lot of different areas of your health and your fitness. And let's help explain it for you. Let's show you how to put power into the machine, and then how to control stroke rate. And when you can do those two things, it all of a sudden, it becomes clear, like the skies part, the sun comes out, and you just look at in a whole new light. All of a sudden, a 2,000 meter piece doesn't seem as bad, or all of a sudden you can row 6,000 meters in a workout and you aren't dreading it because it makes sense. And your brain isn't trying to just problem solve the whole time. Instead, you let the brain quiet down a little bit, and it can just become a bit more physical and a bit more connected.
Yeah. You said something there that's interesting too, right? Because and we could talk about this, but you've done everything from work with like elite CrossFit Games champions. But you mentioned there that it can be a great alternative to people who might even have like some sort of physical issue, right? Lower back pain, issue with the joints. You know, like, is it truly a machine that kind of can serve anyone, or have you even used it as like a rehabilitation tool, or found that it can be a successful rehabilitation tool for people who are suffering with some sort of injury?
Absolutely. 100%. And that's where so much of its popularity comes in, is because you see it in PT offices as well. You see it in homes. You see it as an alternative to people who have injuries from their other sports. You know, often an athletic trainer will put a football player on it if they have a bad knee. You know, you can put a skateboard under that leg, and you can still move and get drive out of the good leg and still get a good aerobic workout. You can gently increase range of motion on the machine without the demand for impact, right? That vertical gravitational force driving you down on top of your joints. You can reduce that. The same goes for a bad back. Surprisingly, a lot of people with bad backs are actually quite comfortable on the rowing machine.
That's something that I was worried about actually when I was going to start rowing, because I had some lower back issues, and I was like, oh man, like just watching the way that I think this thing is supposed to be operated, that just seems like a lot of hinging. You know, but so it's interesting to hear that it's actually the opposite.
Yeah. And again, I'm not a doctor, but I hear and see more stories of people being able to row with a bad back or with previous known back pain, than people who are eliminated by back pain on the machine. But everybody is very understandably cautious. They come into it, they go, that does not look like it can be good for the back. But what I've distilled down from that is that as you begin to learn to move your body, what you'll learn is that hinging at the hip is different than flexion and extension of the spine. And those two things, most people marry those two together, and they don't see a hip hinge as a hip hinge. They see it as flexion and extension of the spine, and they're very different movements. Right. It's a deadlift should be safe for your back as long as you can stabilize a neutral spine. Yeah. And so there is a big element of that where it's hip hinging, not spine flexion and extension.
So something that I was just thinking about, you know, I feel like the rower is interesting in that most people probably think about it as like a cardio device, right? But there's, you know, for anyone who's actually done it and messed around with that damper setting, like it very quickly become like a strength endurance exercise as well. So, you know, from your perspective, I guess if someone's listening to this and they're like, all right, Ken, let me hop on the rower and give it a try. Like, you know, what are the primary benefits that you think people can like take away from the rower? And I guess, you know what I mean? Like what are the is it cardio? Is it strength? Is it a combination of the two?
It is whatever you need it to be, honestly, because you can change resistance levels. So you can make it aerobic, you can make it anaerobic, you can make it a, phosphocreatine energy system push. You can make it a leg strength device. You can use it for back strengthening. About the only thing that you can't do is create any kind of arm push. That's like the one thing you can't really do, but you get hip hinge, you get leg drive, you have arm pull. In my book, that's kind of hitting 3 of the 4 programming components. When I'm looking at like a complete body workout, I'm always thinking upper push pull and lower push pull.
Yeah.
Right. And so the only thing I can't get is upper push on the machine. And again, it can handle a heavy load. So, I think it's up to 500 pounds is the weight limit on this. So you can, if you are overweight and you want to be able to sit down on this machine and get a basic aerobic workout, you can do that. If you want to develop leg strength, you can take that damper setting up. Now, there's a lot of strength involved in that. So you're getting a lot of midline stability that is necessary and a lot of recruitment around that. You can take it for a spin at a marathon, which makes it very aerobic. You can hit 100-meter intervals. It really depends on where you want to steer the workout. It comes down to programming, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's interesting. And so, for you, when you are programming, like where do you start with assessment for an athlete? Go ahead.
Because our process is fully online, we have really drilled down on how to let somebody self-assess, as well as I don't do many things well, but nobody can teach somebody the rowing machine faster or more efficiently than I can sight unseen.
Yeah.
And so that is what we've really nailed down. And so ultimately the self-assessment comes down to knowing the first steps that somebody inevitably needs to understand. They are probably asking it in some way in their heads, and they don't even know that they're asking it. Right. And often that first question is like, how do I even put tension on this handle? What establishes tension? Whether the body is trying to ask that question, or whether the mind is asking that question verbally, one way or another, that question is being asked. And so when the assessment comes, we just need to show you how to reach your desired positions, how to move safely, how to apply force, and then how to take that and you can leapfrog that into stroke rate or, rating. Those are kind of our foundational steps there. You just need to understand positions. Once you understand positions, that will help you to apply force. Once you can effectively apply force to the machine, then you can do it at rate. But not until you've got the first 2 ticked off. Those are kind of your Maslow's hierarchy of needs on the rowing machine.
On the rowing machine.
Yeah, you have to know those first 2 before you can move on to rate. And often when you say go faster on the machine, it's interpreted when you don't understand the machine as higher turnover, right? Increase the rate, but increased rate does not make you go faster on this machine, because for most, if you're new to it, it decreases your application, your practical application of force onto the machine.
Yeah.
Because you don't have enough time to process, how do I put myself in the right position and then give it everything I've got?
Yeah.
So.
No, that helps. Well, and I would agree, right? I've gone through your program. I thought it was awesome. What is keeping you so motivated and excited about, of course you have a business and there's a lot of excitement in just growing that. Right. But, if you've got the foundations covered as well as you do, like what keeps you so intrigued in like growing, the sport of rowing or the interest in rowing?
What matters to me more than anything is I love coaching. I love helping people change their lives. Yeah. That is the more important, that's the biggest piece of this for me, is knowing that I'm having an impact on people's lives. I could sit and just look at YouTube comments and just smile all day, because when people are commenting saying, oh, wow, like this changed my life. I've lost 70 pounds using your workouts. You just made this whole process easier for me. I came to you because I saw the video that we launched today was, rowing coach reacts to famous rowing scenes in TV and movies. And so, but some of the comments that came in, the reason I say that is because some of the comments came in, I found rowing because I saw, who played Jack Ryan? What's his name? He was in The Office.
Oh,
Everybody loves
John Krasinski.
John Krasinski. I found rowing because I saw John Krasinski rowing in Jack Ryan. Therefore, I sought out rowing, came to YouTube, found you, have been watching you for a couple years, and now you are reviewing John Krasinski's rowing in Jack Ryan.
Oh man,
life is full circle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What I love is just that life change, and that's why I continue to make YouTube videos and have fun doing that, is because it means I get to reach 75,000 people every time I put out a new video. Hopefully it's 100,000 soon. Hopefully it's 200. Hopefully it's 1 million. Mm-hmm. That just means that I'm helping people change their lives one way or another.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And actually, if you don't mind me asking, I know that you had a really bad motorcycle accident recently. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how are you doing?
Pretty good now. It was a very tumultuous process. It was a very freak accident. A guy was jaywalking across the street, panicked when he saw oncoming traffic. It was twilight. He was dressed in all black. It was a 6-lane road, so he definitely should not have been on that road. It wasn't like a 2-lane road or something. And when he panicked, he sprinted into the side of my bike. I didn't hit him. He actually hit me knocked me off the bike to the left. I ragdolled, hit my head on the curb, collapsed a lung, had a pretty gnarly gash on my eyebrow because I had my visor open. But the worst part about it, honestly, was the traumatic brain injury part. It was really gnarly. The wave of highs and lows that I rode for about 3 months afterwards, really consistent vertigo. Every time I would get up or sit down or lay down or go from laying down on my right to rolling to my left, I would want to throw up every single time. Wow. Couldn't move. I wasn't supposed to do any exercise I was allowed to start moving after 4 weeks.
Was that for the lung? To let your lung?
Yeah. Right. To make sure that it was re-glued back to my rib cage. And so I actually documented that on YouTube. I was riding my bike, the biker, for an hour. Well, not at first, but I was like, well, I'm sitting on the bike by myself. I might as well just go live. And I started going live every day, and it gave me the motivation because the people were showing up and I was getting to talk to people. And so every day while I was getting in my rehab work, I was just chatting with the people that followed us on YouTube, and it became a pretty cool thing. For about 3 months, I was doing a live workout every day for an hour, and they watched me go from being able to spend 10 minutes on the bike to being able to, complete a workout with burpees a couple months later. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible, like the sense of community you can actually build online, right? I mean, that's why gyms in the physical sense are so incredible, because like you build these relationships, you're working out next to someone. It's cool to hear that you've actually been able to like manufacture that through the platform you've built online and through YouTube.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest element of it was just being raw and vulnerable to what I was actually going through. When I felt do you allow cursing on this show?
Come on, man. Bring it on.
Anyways, like when I was feeling like shit, when I would wake up and I was like not connecting with my wife because something was going on internally, like I was speaking to them about that. I wasn't hiding that part of what was going on. And I was just being very raw about how much it sucked. And it was not I didn't ever take TBIs seriously. I didn't know anything about it. Traumatic brain injuries.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I heard NFL talking about it and how it's becoming a thing in football. But I just never took it seriously until I was going through it myself. It was like, wow, there were days I'd wake up and I couldn't do anything but just sit in my chair and just stare out the window and that would happen for an entire day or an entire week. It was just wild. There's nothing I could do to control it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So, that opening up and that willingness to kind of be raw, is that just like kind of like a part of your personality? Have you always been like that, or has it been a conscious effort that you've made either prior to that or through this process to be more open?
I've always been pretty open.
Yeah.
I've had several pretty impactful moments in my life. And so starting at about 19, I want to say, I started going to therapy for a few things, actually one incident in particular, and continued to go to her, and I still go to her. She was actually the therapist that I went to after this accident. So I started her with, when I was 19 and still going to her years later. And she introduced me to meditation, to breath work. And as a 18-year-old male from rural Minnesota, that's not an acceptable topic of conversation. You don't talk about your feelings. You don't talk about what's going on in your brain, right? It's just not a part of life. You get laughed at for that. But something about that process and seeing my ability to cope and work through things that have happened in my life. And now, at this point, it's been lots of different things that have happened. It just has shown me that there are more men that need to take seriously their own mental health, and that we need to not protect ourselves as much as we think we're supposed to. And that by being open and speaking about it, it doesn't make you weak. It opens up an opportunity for tools to use. Because of my accident and going through this 3 months on YouTube with everybody there, we actually started a new program called The Method, which I haven't even advertised yet. It was we just let in 10 founding members, and so I'm working with them right now as I kind of flesh out the rest of the details. But it's a lifestyle program that's loosely ties in rowing, very loosely, but more importantly is about really encompassing becoming the best version of yourself that you can be. And to that extent, once a week, I'm running a live session with them that starts with meditation, moves into a yin stretching segment, and then ends with some kind of breathwork session. And there are people in there who that was never what they signed up for. And it's become almost the thing that they love most now is that Thursday morning down regulation session, because I've just seen so much positive in my own life, from recovery when I was CrossFitting and the stretching element to the breathwork changes that I've seen and the things that I've personally experienced from breathwork sessions, and then where meditation can take you. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. And that is one of the reasons that I wanted to start this podcast. I actually don't know if I've talked about it too much on the show, but when I was, let's see, I think we got married. I was 27. I just started a new job. I'm in sales, which is already stressful. We had a baby. We're living in New York. And when all of those new responsibilities kind of got piled on, kind of cracks started to show. Things that I didn't really realize were there, or things that I was able to kind of, I don't know if move through is the right way, when I was only responsible for myself. But once I had the added, responsibility of taking care of my wife, being a good father, not bringing work stress home, it was oh man, I got to make some changes, because I do not like the person that I'm kind of, devolving into because of this stress. And so in doing that, right, meditation I got into. I have not been doing as much of it as of late as I would like, but it made a profound impact in my own mental well-being. And so the show is kind of look, I've started to dabble into some of these other areas where I've seen improvement. It's how can I go out and find other people so that they can share their experience, or make people aware of other approaches that might be beneficial to them. So something that you mentioned a couple times there that I would love to talk to you more about is the breathwork piece. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about, when you say breathwork, what are you referring to? Yeah,
well, saying breathwork is like saying exercise, right? Okay. How do you exercise? Let's unpack this a little bit.
There's a lot of places to start. Yeah,
so many places to start. And I've been lucky enough that I've been at many moments actually been surrounded by some really powerful practitioners who have taught me different methods. So power breathing has been one, and I was using that in a therapy perspective. Okay. which
starts for the lung.
No, sorry. Mental therapy. This was when I was actually working with my therapist as trauma release. And a couple of them have been trauma release related, but they're very impactful for both trauma release and for just breath practice. But it essentially is a hyperventilation technique that ends in breath hold and under supervision, of course. And it's unbelievable. I mean, practiced in cycling, you can get to the point where you're holding your breath for 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Your first time doing
Incredible.
it. You work through maybe 2 to 3 cycles, and by the third cycle, you're holding it for 5 minutes. I mean, it's just incredible.
So I've done one session, and I didn't even realize it was power breathing until you just described it. And what you just
different names, so every different practitioners call it different things.
Yeah, and the practitioner that I worked with, I don't know if I'd have her on the show. It was part of a whole other thing.
Yeah.
People are like, dude, talk about that other thing. You're just gonna leave hanging.
You're gonna leave. You're not gonna tell us about this thing.
Well, so all right, we'll dive into it. So let's see. I think I was 25. And my roommate is a stand-up comedian in New York City. He's now a commentator for ESPN college basketball. It was a pretty interesting cast of characters in that room. And one day he sends me this email, and it's like a casting call for men with thinning hair. And I'm like, dude, go fuck yourself. He's like, no, did you open it? He's like, look at it. And I'm like, he's like, it's actually a really good opportunity. He's like, you go in, it's for Men's Health and Rogaine. And what they're going to do is like, they want young dudes in the city who think they're losing their hair, and they're going to build this whole thing around like growing your game. I can't believe I'm talking about this. I tried to bury this deep in my past, talk about trauma.
Get your skeletons out of the closet.
Yeah, man, we got to. Let's be open. And so anyways, but it was kind of cool. So it was like over like, I don't remember, it was like 6 months or something. But every week we got introduced to like something that was going to help us like develop as a person. And this one week was with this breath coach. And so anyways, it starts out at the bar, which is probably not the best place for a breathing session.
Weird place to start a breathwork session.
Yeah. Well, and so anyways, we end up going back to like her studio, and she puts me through this whole breathing exercise, and it takes about an hour. And some of it was what you were describing. I didn't know the power breathing, but that's what we did. But I mean, it was like a really profound experience. Like to the point where I felt like I had tapped into something in my body only by breathing that I didn't know was possible. And I was kind of like, wow, like how have I had this potential?
Was it psychedelic in nature?
Almost. Yeah. Like, and what I remember specifically was, I think this might've been kind of what you were describing, but basically I was like laying on my back and people are like, oh man, this is getting juicy. I was laying on my back. And basically, I'm trying to remember what I was doing, but I was almost breathing to the point of, like I was getting exhausted. Like I was breathing to some pace, and she was like, just stay with me. Don't lose it. You're going to want to give up. And eventually, like you almost kind of like, I kind of blacked out, so to speak. But it was like the most calming, almost like psychedelic experience, kind of like you're saying. And, I think it felt like it was maybe 30 seconds. And by the time I kind of like, came out of it, or she talked me out of it, I was like, that was wild. She's like, how long do you think you were under? I was like, I don't know, like 30 seconds. And I think she said like 5 or 10 minutes or something just insane.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was incredible, but I've never done it again. Yeah. And I've always wanted to. And so like you talking about like how profound it's been for you, I'm all fired up over here. I'm ready to dive back in. So I'm sorry, I completely stole your thunder.
No, it's fine. So I've had a similar experience with another version of it called biodynamic breathwork or biodynamic breathing. And funny enough, it was with a practitioner who split her time between New York and Mexico. And I mean, I had a session where it was pure psychedelic in nature, took nothing. I mean, it was just breath work. I struggle to say this because I feel like when you start getting to this depth is when you start to get people like, got it. He's He's real hippy dippy.
Oh yeah. Oh, this guy's out there.
But in reality, I have to imagine that is what psychedelics are like. I haven't taken them. I don't know. But I was seeing in fifth dimensions and sixth dimensions of like energy that I couldn't process. My body went into full body convulsions, and not like scary, but I was in control, but it was in such a relaxed state that all of a sudden like energy was just vibrating through. It was nuts. And it lasted 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know how long I'd been under either. It was very similar. Like, oh, how long have I been? And 3 hours later, we actually she had to like wake me and move me to another place because there was another class starting where we were. And she like took me to another place and I went back under just immediately because I was just so deep into it. It's crazy.
That's crazy. Well, and I remember too now, there was some sensation that like my arms were rising.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
they
if
probably
that
were.
Well, but I think she was like no, they didn't move at all. But it was like almost like a weird out of body. And I think if anyone's listening to the show, that no one's going to mistake me for being hippy dippy. So I don't know, maybe I can be like
the neutralizer here.
Yeah. Some neutralizer to be like, no, there's really something to this if you try it. Have you ever gotten another experience like that again? Or is the breath work that you're doing now for like a different purpose?
The purpose depends. And, so like the group that I take through right now, I've done like some power breathing sessions with them, not with that intent. Like I'm not trying to do trauma release therapy. I'm not qualified to do that. I'm just trying to help them expand their horizons as to what they have as tools accessible to them. So, we've also just done controlled breathing where we're working on like 1 minute breath cycles to learn to tap into your breath and understand that we don't need to live in a sympathetic breathing state where we're in like panicked breath all day, every day. And that learning to control your diaphragm and learning to control your lungs is just as important as exercising or eating right. Because we need air to live. It makes sense that we would learn to control that system of our body, which brings oxygen and allows oxygen out.
It really is so wild that it's neglected.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is literally imperative that we do it, yet we just kind of like take it for granted. And like the way that we do it is the way that we do it.
Because we live in a sympathetic state.
Yeah. Can you talk
all the time?
Can you talk a little bit about that? What you mean by that?
Yeah. So sorry. So
no. But I think for a lot of people, to your point, right? Like they're like, I didn't even realize I'm living in a sympathetic state.
Yeah. But what does that even mean? Right.
Yeah.
Using words that don't make sense to the layperson. A sympathetic state is essentially your fight or flight response. Mm-hmm. It's living in stress, essentially, is what a sympathetic state is. It's waking up and checking your phone immediately. It's going to bed staring at your screen. It's worrying constantly about whether you're on time or late or what's happening while you're on the road with traffic around you, or worrying about your bills or. That's a sympathetic state, and never stopping to downregulate and tap into our parasympathetic nervous system. It's an actual nervous system. This is not like hippy dippy. This is science, right?
Right.
Our sympathetic nervous system is what is responsible for our ability to fight, flight, or freeze. That's our sympathetic nervous system. When it gets overwhelmed, that's when you freeze and black out in high stress situations, right? You talk to, not that I'm military, but you talk to anybody who's in a high stress work position, and you have to train, and you can elevate that position so that you don't freeze when things get really scary and really hot.
We just had Chris Hinshaw on, and it's so interesting. He was just talking about that in addition to the stuff he's doing with CrossFit athletes, that's one of the areas where he's trying to help make an impact because of exactly what you're saying. And I mean, obviously with everything going on in the world right now, there's, I think everyone's well aware that there's a need to get folks in that service, trained to be able to help handle these high stress situations. Yeah. But that's exactly what he was talking about is the need to like prepare them to be able to like operate and function under these like high stress situations.
Because you will always deviate to your lowest level of training. Always. In a high stress situation, you will always fall onto your lowest level of training. And so if you have not trained in high stress situations, if I put you into, I don't know what they call them, a shooting house scenario where you are going in, if I took a layperson off the street and handed them a gun and put them into that house, the first thing that pops out from inside of a room is just going to scare them to the point of like, I'm done. I don't want to hold this thing anymore. I don't even know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Right.
Yeah.
But the same happens in emergency situations in life. If you've never practiced putting on a bandage onto a really bloody limb, right? If you've never put yourself into a practice scenario where you're putting on a bandage like that, you're not going to rise to the occasion. That's what movies are made of. That's not what happens in real life. If you see somebody with a broken leg at a 90-degree angle and you've never attempted to think about what that would be like to experience that or see that in real life, you'll start puking. You will not be able to handle the stress of how to actually help that person. Yeah. You have to put yourself in stressful scenarios to be able to handle stressful scenarios. Yeah. Anyways, that's your sympathetic nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system is what brings you down. It's what we attempt to use wine and alcohol to do, is to help us down regulate. It's not really what they do, but it allows us to kind of like forget.
That's where a lot of us go in an attempt, whether we realize it or not, to get there.
Yes,
to get to that feeling. Yeah,
correct. And I'm not judging on that by no means. I drink alcohol. You're judging a little bit. No, I use alcohol. I don't. I have no. I don't want anybody to feel bad about doing that, because that's just part of our society. But parasympathetic nervous system is absolutely trainable, just like your sympathetic nervous system is. Yeah. So just like we can elevate our lowest level of base training, we can also elevate our ability to trigger parasympathetic and go into a parasympathetic, relaxed, downregulated state, which is going to allow us to actually listen to what our body is telling us. Our body is constantly sending signals to our brain, but we just don't ever listen because we're being fed by the inputs that are coming in from around us. This is essentially listening to the inputs that are coming from inside of us, real physical inputs, not just like, how do I feel today? Right. Like the difference, you do that, but you are also really taking in the signals from inside versus the signals from outside. And that's probably a good analogy for what sympathetic is receiving stimulus from the outside. Parasympathetic is receiving the stimulus from inside and paying attention to it.
Yeah, that's something that personally, like, I need to get better. And we were kind of catching up before we started recording, in an attempt to do so many things, it's very easy to just be hit with like constant inputs, So for me, it's like work, trying to get the podcast, up and going each and every week. The kids, being married, and my wife's awesome because she's going to listen to this. Right. It's like, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And it's, I think a lot of people feel like, well, where do I build in the time to like do nothing? Right. So, I mean, for you, like, clearly, this is something you think about. You're sounds like running this awesome, I don't know what we'd call it, like a closed beta of this method program, which is pretty cool. How do you build these into your own day to day?
I'll be honest, I'm not perfect with my own practice either. I wish I made more time. I'm also married. I have a kid with, I have a dog, I have chickens, I have a yard that I have a business. There's a lot that I am juggling as well. And like you said, we were talking about this ahead of time, but for me, it is simply being cognizant of what I am and am not doing. Any opportunity that I can take for 2 minutes of down regulation is a success in my book. I don't need it to be hour-long sessions. I don't need it to be that I show up to a yoga studio 3 times a week. I think there's value to that, but I get, in my opinion, the down regulation can happen from a sitting and stretching session for 10 minutes. It can happen from an hour-long breathwork session, or a 3-hour-long breathwork session, or a 5-minute meditation. I think you can find it anywhere. And so my own practice is that when I can, I try to be cognizant of what I am doing with my energy in that exact moment. If that means that I'm sitting on my computer, but I'm focusing on controlled breath work, or maybe I close my mouth while I'm on a walk with my dog and I nose breathe only while I'm on a walk with my dog. Or maybe I shut down and after my wife goes to bed, I sit down and actually have a true meditation or stretching session. And often those two kind of go hand in hand. Or I honestly look forward to my Thursday mornings with the method group. Just teaching it is a down regulation for me.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not truly believing in what I'm saying, you're going to sniff that out a mile away. Down regulation takes like real, genuine input. And if I'm speaking like I am now, where I'm like excited on caffeine and, you know, I'm like going back to film a video after this is over. And
right.
If I'm talking about like meditation, you know, like it doesn't fall the same way it does as to if I have to kind of down regulate myself to be able to have it. So. No,
that makes sense. So that's great. And I imagine the method is something that you're going to roll out in a broader sense in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Deadline. I'm looking at like maybe mid-July is kind of what I'm thinking for when we open it to the public. I'm going to continue to keep it a closed group. Yeah. So I think we're going to cap it at like 200 people at the most. And after that, it's going to be, you know, only as many spots open as many people, you know, decide not to continue. But it's number one, there's this, just, you would probably love this. It's a concept called misogy, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No, I haven't. Please.
You know Kyle Korver, NBA player. Yeah. So I actually learned about this because of an article that was written about him and his trainer in Outside Magazine in like 2014. If you search Outside Magazine and misogy, it'll explain the concept beautifully. But essentially,
I'll link to it.
Yeah, it's called like the once a year workout plan. I think this is the name of the article. Brilliant copywriting there.
Now people are perking up.
The idea is that once a year you tackle a workout that is so hairy in nature that it's not about the success or the failure of the workout. And you basically give yourself like a period of time. So maybe a 24-hour window to complete it. But it's not about the success or the failure. It's not about training for it. It's simply showing up and attempting a task that is so big and so hairy that it teaches you about what you are truly capable of. For the rest of the year, you can live on that idea of, while this may be hard, what I'm going through right now, it's nothing compared to what I attempted to do 6 months ago.
I love this.
And so in the method, it is based off of the premise of tackling a misogy together once a year. And so throughout the year, quarterly, we actually have what we call micro misogis, which are like little, maybe like 3-hour events that are still very challenging in nature, but not something like a 12-hour or 24-hour window. And that misogy happens when we're all together. And
I love this.
So that is the basis of what the method is working towards, is helping people to really open their eyes to what they are capable of. And that's why we mix in a little bit of rowing. That's an element of it. But why we have down regulation sessions, because you need to be tuned in with what is happening between your ears to go through something like that. I can't have somebody off the street just show up and attempt a 24-hour something or other. You know, the example in the article, I think they started at, I don't remember what the island was. I want to say like Catalina Island, and paddleboarded to Long Beach. None of them knew how to paddleboard. They just like got on paddleboards and paddleboarded from like Catalina Island to Long Beach, which is a long ocean crossing with just like one small boat following them. And it took them like 9 hours. Their hands were just bloody at the end, but they did it. Yeah. And again, it wasn't about how long it took. It wasn't a race. It's none of that. It's simply, are you willing to put yourself in a position where you just have to? And if you fail, it's okay, because you took yourself to the point at which you failed. Yeah. And we learn just as much through our failure as we do through our success. And so that was one of the examples. It's really amazing. And I've held on to this concept since 2014, since reading that article, and I've looked for an outlet, and it never made sense in anything else I've ever done. Yeah. Until I started the method. And the day I started the method, it was this massive epiphany of this is it. This is the group that will be able to make it through a Misogi event. This is the way that I will be able to bring 200 people together on a weekend somewhere in the world, who knows where, but every year we will have this almost ritualistic physical event that we all attempt.
Oh, it's so cool. And it's funny. Have you read David Goggins' book?
I have not. Okay. I'll be honest, with a young kid, my reading level has like.
Well, if you don't know anything about David Goggins, or if the people listening don't, I mean, he is, a former Navy SEAL who just prides himself on like trying to find his boundaries. And, to paraphrase and to terribly paraphrase, but basically he's like, humans are only operating at like maybe 20% of their potential. Like the average person has no idea what they're actually capable of. And like thinking about work capacity, like you really don't know what tired is, or to the extent that you can actually push your body in terms of physical exertion. The one thing that he did that stands out to me is I think it was one of these ultra marathons. I think he was like a big like weightlifter at this point, and he just went out with no training. And I think it was either 60 miles. I don't want to over exaggerate. It might've been 100 miles, but he just did it. Yeah. And like, there were some pretty serious physical repercussions, but like he pushed through that physical and mental barrier. And I remember reading about that and just being like, oh, that's so interesting, and like, to your point, once you've taken the limiter off and mentally, what you were capable of, the next time you hit adversity, that you can go so much further.
We are elevating our lowest level of base training.
Ah, yeah. Brought it back. There it is.
Bringing it full circle.
Full circle once again.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then, so, I mean, we talked a little bit at the beginning about all the things you're doing agriculture wise around your house. Is nutrition a piece of this as well?
Yes. What I'm finding is that nutrition is just very naturally falling into the discussion for everybody, but it is not becoming the highest priority of what we're doing. Because just by nature of, hey, I'm realizing that my whole life could be improved, that all of the things that I'm doing are worth analyzing, the nutrition comes into play as a part of it.
Yeah.
And my own philosophy on nutrition is that I am anti-dogmatic. So I don't believe in any one right way of eating, except that everything in moderation, including moderation itself. And so, and at the end of the day, you really can't argue with eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar, like that's kind of hard to argue with. And so the more vegetables you can put into your diet, the better. I think that generally as an American society, we could do with like scaling back our meat consumption a little bit and not placing such a high priority on meat consumption. I'm not saying we shouldn't eat meat. But if you choose not to, I'm also okay with that. I think there are ways to balance out nutrition, but generally consume a lot of vegetables, have some fruit, eat meats that don't take a lot of eat foods that don't take a lot of processing, and generally you're on a good health path. I
completely agree. And we did an episode about this earlier. But I feel from a nutrition perspective, it's like you can get pretty far with common sense. Like you intuitively know what is bad for you and what is generally good for you. To your point, processed food, a ton of sugar, probably not great, right? Vegetables, meat in moderation, preferably something that was like raised, I don't know, in an environmentally conscious, sustainably, environmentally conscious way, like is probably going to be better for you than something that's just pumped full of hormones. It's like, so I agree with you there. So that'll actually be a pretty short conversation. And maybe we can end with this, because I'm interested to hear now, just kind of like knowing all the ways that you're seeking to like optimize, and maybe that's not, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but it seems like you're very conscious of trying to like, I guess, optimize your own potential, or kind of like what you're getting out of everything that you're doing. Going back to this traumatic brain injury, how did you approach recovery?
Patiently and slowly. I was meditating every day, I was taking supplements, like good, just general health supplements, to attempt to supplement what I might not be getting through my food. I cut out alcohol. I increased my vegetable intake, and I just truly listened to, I don't always think that doctors are the best when it comes to like lifestyle suggestions. I think they're great for emergencies. Like they saved my life. But when it comes to like recovery stuff, that's not really what they're attuned for. But they told me, hey, don't work out for, I can't remember if it was a month or 2 months, but don't be physical for a month. And so I just kind of said, all right, I'm going to listen to that, and it's really going to suck and I'm not going to enjoy it, but I probably could use the time to let my body truly heal and focus on nothing but making sure that my lung is good for the future. Because if my lung is out of commission, I'm going to suffer for the rest of my life because of this. And my life is, physical. And if I lose that and I lose lung capacity, I'm in trouble. So a lot of patience, and just trying to fine tune as many of the dials and levers as I could pull as possible. And like I said, cutting alcohol, increasing supplementation, increasing vegetables, decreasing protein consumption, to just try and get as many micronutrients in my body as possible, taking plenty of probiotics, and then just gently walking myself back on the physical level. And really, it started with the first week, I think, that I started moving again. I was taking 5-minute walks every day.
Oh, wow.
With somebody with me, so that in case anything went wrong, that I had somebody there. And there's nothing like being having gone to the CrossFit Games and taking a 5-minute walk and needing somebody next to you for safety. So that was it. I mean, and I just took my time and listened to my body every day. Lots of meditation, because I just knew that I needed that, especially with the traumatic brain injury piece.
I guess that's one of the things I was interested in getting your opinion on. Do you feel the meditation served to actually help with the rehabilitation of the brain, or was it more like the emotional kind of healing that you needed going through this like traumatic experience and like the hard recovery that you had to go through?
Both. It was helpful from I believe it was helpful for my brain to actually slow down. One of the things that came up for me, and I believe everybody's brain injury is independent, right? A brain injury is not the same for all people. Yeah. For me, I would get completely lost in my words. If you and I couldn't do this podcast, would not have been doable. I couldn't think far enough ahead of time, that it was just my mouth running and my brain just trying to catch up. And so I would forget words. I'd be in the middle of a conversation and I would start to get angry because I couldn't pull up the words that I wanted to. So it allowed me to slow down and give my brain time to process and kind of feel normal again. It allowed me to feel what I was actually feeling and going through. And so that helped with the emotional piece as well, because I was reckoning with, do I feel really shitty today? And just saying like, it's okay. You don't have to grit your teeth through this. You can feel shitty. That's acceptable. Yeah. And you can talk about it, and you can say, I feel shitty. And you can, in the middle of a conversation with your wife, stop and say, can we just stop the conversation? I'm getting frustrated that I can't speak right now, and to her credit, she was amazing. She would just walk away. And that was all I needed. That was exactly what I needed. I just, for me to try and justify why I had to, that's hard. So, I stopped taking phone calls and things like that too, because it was just not doable for me. Yeah. So the meditation really gave me space to work on all of the elements of my healing and the physical. I did a lot of work in those meditation sessions where I was imagining my lung healing, where I was vision casting or envisioning, whatever you want, seeing that lung stick to the rib cage again and feeling fully inflated and seeing air flow in and out of the lung. And so that was, a part of the rehab as well.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I've never, to your point, no two injuries are the same, but I played college football and I don't know how many concussions I had, but I had maybe one or two, one specifically that was bad. And so I can relate in the sense that I remember what it was like to not be able to have no verbal recall. Or to not be able, I think I've even said this on the show before, but I would read 2 sentences and I couldn't remember what I just read, and that was a week and a half. I don't know. It was kind of scary, but I was interested to ask because now I'm at a point, and I think a lot of it too is I do not get enough sleep because our youngest just does not sleep through the night. He's adorable. He's 6 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're in the midst of sleep training this guy. But I get frustrated now with some of these things, right? No traumatic brain injury, or at least, who knows? Yeah. But my wife might argue otherwise. But and so I'm always interested. I'm like, man, is it just a factor of stress? Is it lack of sleep? Is it all of these things combined? And so, to your point, always interested to hear what people are doing to kind of try and optimize brain function, I guess maybe is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
Do you mess around with nootropics at all? Do you do much?
I haven't. I'm interested, but I just haven't taken it's one of those, I feel like to go into it, I want to really overcome the understanding of everything that's happening there and get more into the society before I, just jump into it.
Yeah.
And I just haven't done the research.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Shane, man, this has been awesome. I appreciate it. I think people are like, oh, we went from honeybees to rowing to all the way down to nootropics and back. So this was great. So for people who want to follow what you're doing, where is the best place to do that?
Any social channel, Dark Horse Rowing, or our website, darkhorserowing.com. That's how you're going to find us. Our biggest social channel is YouTube. Yeah. So if you want to really dive into what it is that we do well, come find me over on YouTube, youtube.com/darkhorserowing, or our website, darkhorserowing.com.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. And we'll make sure to direct people all there. And it'd be remiss not to ask, how are you feeling? Fully recovered? Is the lung good? Are you feeling sharp?
I do. I definitely feel back. It was end of February now. So I think I have enough time between the accident and now that and with everything in the world, just, sliding south lately, I'm thankful that kind of it all started to hit right as my recovery was ending. So it at least gave me the time. It was kind of like the world shut down to let me recover. Yeah. And then as it started to spin up again was when I started to feel okay. So it all kind of timed well.
Awesome. Well, good, man. We're glad to hear it. And man, thank you for the time. This has been fantastic. And we'll have to have you back on sometime soon. Hear more about the method for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Shane.
You bet.